We're back. This is the second video I'm making on the crypto crash. Why the financial system safeguards needed for digital assets. The Senate Banking on Housing and Urban Affairs Committee met a couple days ago, and there's some clips in here, guys, that you need to understand, you need to listen to. And so if you watch my last video, that's where we started, and now this is where we continue. So I will stop talking until this guy starts talking, and then I'm going to give my 2 cents, because that's why you're here. Why watch my videos?
On digital asset financial stability risks and regulations. And one of SLOC's recommendations was that Congress pass legislation providing rulemaking authority to financial regulators over the spot market for non-security digital assets. Mr. Reiners, why is it important that Congress address this gap? And how would you propose that we do it?
Senator Menendez, for the past 10 years or so, the big debate when it comes to crypto regulation is, are these things commodities or securities? And of course, the Howey test is principally what's used to determine whether...
Yeah, let's use a test that's 70 or 80 years old to figure out digital assets, because digital assets were around when this was made up. Makes total sense, man.
Not a given token is an investment contract and therefore a security. Now, I happen to agree with Chair Gensler that most cryptocurrencies are securities that meet the Howey test. But there are some cryptocurrencies, and I'll just use Bitcoin as an example, that are decentralized enough that they are commodities. And the CFTC regulates commodity spot markets.
Okay, Bitcoin, right? There are 2 mining companies that control over 50% of the mining pool. So what does that mean? If those two companies choose to, they could do whatever they want and dictate transactions on the markets. I'd have to say that Bitcoin is probably not as decentralized as this guy thinks. It is on the global scale, but when you have 2 mining companies controlling 51% or 51% or above of the pool, that's a problem, and that's actually happening right now.
That they don't regulate commodity spot markets. They only regulate commodity derivatives markets, although they do have fraud and manipulation enforcement authority in commodity spot markets. So that is the gap that needs to be addressed. And so what I recommend, and I have this detailed in my written testimony, is that Congress carve out the cryptocurrency from the definition of commodity in the Commodity Exchange Act and include cryptocurrency as a new category of security on our securities law, so that's clear to...
Listen to what he just said. He wants us to change laws, to take cryptocurrency and put it under the SEC basically guidance, as all of them are securities. That is what he just said. We're the only country in the world that considers something like XRP a security. We're the only one trying to fight this. Gary Gensler, Jay Clayton, Lee Reiners. These guys are leading us down a path that is going to bring America into a nation of nothing. This is the technology of the future, and we're sitting here, it's all securities, this and that, and the SEC is going to push everything offshore. They're going to act in favor of the banks, right? Because that is their first client. That's who they meet with every day. They don't meet with retail investors. They say they're there to protect us, the SEC, right? They're here for retail. Where were you all of 2022 when you were meeting with the criminals? You were meeting with the criminals, Gary Gensler. You didn't see anything. You didn't check it out. You didn't do your due diligence. And now you want us to give you more of it? You want us to give you the whole space?
Everyone, to the market and everyone else, that the SEC has exclusive rulemaking authority and jurisdiction over cryptocurrency.
Professor Yang and Professor Yadov.
All right. I got another clip.
Friend and admirer of Professor Allen's work, and I certainly agree with the sentiment that we should do everything we can to restrict crypto from entering the banking system. But as long as crypto's legal...
Okay. This guy is supposed to be an expert on digital assets. If he was, how does he not know about the BIS Innovation Hub? How does he not know about R3 and Quarter? How does he not know about Project Ion on the DTCC? How does he not know about Bank of England, Central Bank Digital Currency, Bank of India, Brazil? How does he not know about any of this? Digital assets are being used to move value across the world for a cheaper amount than the banks. This guy is here to serve the banking conglomerate. We are here to protect retail investors. This guy is not here to protect us.
Then these firms are entitled to banking services. So I think the challenge is, where do you draw the line? What specific crypto activity can be done in a safe and sound manner? And so I think the banking agencies have started off on the right and having guidance in place that says if you're a regulated bank, so this is the FDIC, OCC, and Fed, all have guidance in place that says if you're a regulated bank and you want to engage in crypto activity, you have to let us know first. But again, I think more is needed. And so
So he's talking about, okay, so if there's a crypto company that's built outside of the US, right? And people inside of the US are using it, right? This guy, they want to give all the power to the SEC so the SEC can control or regulate something that's not even inside of the US. There's so much here, guys, that we need to listen to what he's saying, because he's turning in his testimony and all his recommendations, and all his recommendations are against the retail investors. They're there to help the rich people, the banks, and the institutions, not regular Americans.
I recommend is that banking agencies do a horizontal exercise where they understand all the different ways that banks are exposed to crypto, and then release that information to the public so that not only bank customers, but bank investors as well are aware of the risk, because the guidance hasn't been perfect. And we've seen a few banks that, unbeknownst to regulators, were more exposed to crypto than previously realized. And I would just point to Silvergate.
Okay, so what he's talking about here, guys, is Silvergate was a intermediary with the bank, right? So when you cashed out money on a particular exchange, I know they work with Binance and a bunch of different exchanges. So when you cashed out money, Silvergate was the bank that was taking your USD or whatever and turning it into your bank account. They were doing that transfer through Silvergate. So what happened was recently, last couple of months, is there was a lot of people withdrawing from Silvergate, and it really did a small bank run on the bank, and the bank didn't have enough cash. So the bank went to a different bank to borrow money so they could do all of these transactions. And then that's when Signature Bank said, hey, we won't touch another transaction that's under $100,000, needs to be over $100,000. That's what he's talking about.
It's a perfect example. Over 90% of their deposits were from crypto-related firms in the fourth quarter.
That's exactly what I explained to you just now. Sorry.
Of last year. They saw over $8 billion in deposits leave.
Yep.
That was over 60% of their deposit base. And it looks likely that they would have failed if they did not get emergency liquidity from the Federal Home Loan Bank of San Francisco, which of course is not the reason that we have federal home loan banks. They exist to support home ownership, not to bail out banks that gamble on crypto. Again, I think the challenge is, where do you draw the...
This guy throws mud and sand in everything, right? We know that the banks right now are way over leveraged, right? The debt is right now is like 126%, right? There is so much debt in America. We have gotten ourselves into a huge problem. We have $32 trillion in debt, and it's only going to keep growing. And there's really not a situation where we can get out of this, right? It's just going to keep on going. And that's where something like the Great Reset comes into play, right? Where they stop all the financial system, stock market, derivatives market, everything stops. And they have to redo everything. And I don't know exactly what's going to happen with this, but this is the possibility and what could happen. I have some clips from what the Great Reset could look like, but that's in a later video. Let's get back to this.
The Basel Committee finalized their guidance in December. The U.S. has a history, of course, of gold plating, as they say, Basel standards. And I think that's certainly warranted in this case as well, because if crypto had been more integrated in the banking system, the fallout of FTX would have been much, much worse.
No, I think that's a really important.
All right, this guy.
Entering the banking system. But as long as crypto's legal, then these firms...
Oh, did I play that already? I'm sorry. I just played that. I apologize. I had an extra one. I do apologize.
Thank you, Senator, for this opportunity.
All right, this is Professor Linda Zhang. She actually has a different opinion than Lee does, which I like. But let's listen to what she has to say to the committee.
To expound upon what I think are key foundational building blocks that Congress needs to consider. Consumer and investor protection, that is crucial. And having clear legal rights in the property that they purchase. When part of the problem with the bankruptcies is that the bankruptcy court had really nothing to work with in terms of legal rights. And so here's the opportunity for Congress to make very clear that when consumers purchase digital assets, that they have a property right in that digital asset. And then,
so what she's talking about here too is if somebody buys crypto assets and they have it on an exchange, the exchange, basically it's their crypto until you take that crypto off the exchange, right? Not your keys, not your crypto. If you're new to crypto and this is the first time you're hearing this, let me just tell you that by leaving your crypto on a centralized exchange, or any exchange for that matter, if something happens to the exchange, like with FTX, Celsius, all that stuff, your crypto you could lose all of your crypto, or you're going to have to wait years in bankruptcy court to even get a smaller amount of it back. In 2022, before a lot of these things happened, I warned my community to get out of all these exchanges, and we had very minimal loss in our community because we did have a warning from me and my team about some of the stuff that was happening last year. We weren't too affected by it in the Cryptonaires Discord, but let's keep listening to Linda Zhang.
that will be respected in a bankruptcy proceeding. The other really important concern to keep in mind is that this kind of technology is about democratizing financial services.
Yep.
And that means when I, for example, moved back to the US from Europe, I had to pay $4,000 to my European bank to move my own savings back to the US. And then
She had to pay $4,000 to move her money from bank where she was living in another country, I think she said Europe, to back to America. And $4,000. Imagine if she used something like XRP or XLM, she could move that value for pennies, if that.
I also had no profit from the spread the bank made when it converted from Swiss francs to US dollars. This is the type of opportunity that blockchain technology can help with. I look forward to that day when I'll be able to transfer money cross-border to myself and actually also make part of that profit in the spread. And that kind of equitable interest in financial services is what makes Web3 different from, say, Web2. And so we have to think about how can we empower consumers, give them consumer data rights, while also protecting them through disclosures and legal protections in bankruptcy.
All right, so I like Professor Lina Zhang. She's obviously way better at this than Lee is. But here's Lee. Lee, what was it? Reiners? Lee, yeah, here's this guy is. If you want to tweet out of this guy, Lee Reiners, okay? This is the guy who's trying to hurt retail investors in America. This guy right here. And he works for Duke. He's working for some subsidiary of Duke. Check this out right here. This is where he works. Duke, Trinity College Arts and Sciences. That's it, guys. I'll see you in the next video. I got more clips to go, but I don't want to extend this too long. I will see you in V3 of this little series on what the hell is going on in Congress. Peace.